A flower. A flower is one of the parts of a plant. It is the most colorful part of a plant. Most plants produce flowers. If you look around your environment, you will observe different types of flowers. The flowers are seen at different times of the year. We see them in our gardens, our compounds, in the forests and in our farms. They appear in different colors, shapes and sizes. A flower is the reproductive part of a plant. Most flowers have both male and female reproductive parts, but some have only one reproductive part. Parts of a flower. A flower is made of several parts, all of which have a role that they play in the reproduction of a plant. These parts include the stamen, consisting of the anthers and the filament. The pistil, consisting of the stigma, style, ovary and the ovules. The petals, also known as the corolla. The sepals. And the stalk. Stamen. The stamen is the male part of the flower. Stamen produce the male reproductive cells called pollen grains. Pistil. The pistil is the female reproductive part of a flower. It is made up of the stigma, style, ovules and the ovary. The stigma receives pollen grains from the anthers. The style joins the stigma to the ovary. The ovary contains ovules. The ovules are female reproductive cells. Corolla. The corolla consists of brightly colored parts called petals. Petals surround the reproductive parts of flowers. Petals are often brightly colored to attract pollinators. Nectary. Nectary is found at the base of petals. It produces a sugary substance called nectar. Nectar is food for many insects like bees and butterflies. Calyx. It consists of small green parts that look like leaves called sepals. Sepals protect the inner parts of the flower while it is growing in the bud. They protect the flower from insect attack. The stalk. The stalk joins the flower to the plant. Pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anthers to the stigma. Pollen grains contain the male reproductive cells of a plant. There are two main types of pollination: self-pollination, cross-pollination. Self-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anthers to the stigma within the same flower or to stigma of another flower on the same plant. Cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anthers of one flower to the stigma of another flower on a different plant of the same type. In self-pollination, only one plant is involved. In cross-pollination, two plants of the same type are involved. Agents of pollination. Agents of pollination help to transfer pollen grains from one flower to another. These include insects, birds, and water. Insects such as bees and butterflies visit flowers to collect nectar. Nectar is food for the insects. They are attracted by the bright colors and sweet smell of the petals. They help to carry pollen grains from one flower to another. Water carries pollen grains to different places as it flows. When winds blow, it carry away pollen grains from flowers to other different places. Some birds feed on nectar. As birds suck the nectar, they trigger pollen grains. The pollen grains fall to the stigma and pollination takes place. Characteristics of insect-pollinated flowers. Insect-pollinated flowers are usually large in size. They are large to make them visible to pollinators. Insect-pollinated flowers have brightly colored petals to attract insects. Insect-pollinated flowers have a strong pleasant smell. The smell attracts insects. Insect-pollinated flowers produce nectar. Nectar is food for some insects. Insect-pollinated flowers have anthers which are not very large and are firmly attached to the filament. Insect-pollinated flowers small amounts of heavy and sticky pollen grains. This makes it easy for insects to carry them. Insect-pollinated flowers have flat and sticky stigmas. Characteristics of wind-pollinated flowers. Wind-pollinated flowers are small in size. Wind-pollinated flowers have petals which are not brightly colored. The petals are often green in color. Wind-pollinated flowers have no scent. Wind-pollinated flowers have large anthers loosely attached to filament. This makes it easy for wind to carry them. Wind-pollinated flowers produce a lot of light and powdery pollen which can easily be carried by wind. Wind-pollinated flowers have large hairy stigmas. Fertilization in plants. Fertilization is the union of the male cell in the pollen grain and the female cell in the ovary to form a seed. During fertilization, the two cells fuse, that is, they join together. This process of joining together is called fusion. The stigma in a flower produces a sticky substance. When a pollen grain falls onto the stigma, a pollen tube develops and it continues to grow down the style to the ovary. The male reproductive cells, gametes, in a pollen grain are carried along the pollen tube. When the pollen tube reaches the ovary, the pollen grains fuse, join, with the ovules, the female reproductive cells. Fertilization takes place. After fertilization, the ovules become seeds and the ovary develops into fruits. Parts of a seed. A seed develops from an ovule after fertilization. Most seeds have the following parts: the tester, seed coat; the hilum, scar; cotyledons; the plumule and radicle; the micropyle. There are two main types of seeds: monocot and dicot seed. Parts of a monocot seed. Tester, seed coat. The tester is the hard outer coat. It is also known as the seed coat. It is the skin and protects the inner parts of the seed. Endosperm. This is where food is stored. In monocotyledons, food is stored in endosperm. Cotyledon. These are the seed leaves. A monocot seed has only one cotyledon. Seeds with one leaf are called monocotyledons, e.g. maize, millet, wheat, rice. Plumule. Plumule grows and develops into the shoot of a plant. Radicle. Radicle grows and develops into the root of a plant. Scar. It is the place where the seed was attached to the fruit. Examples of monocots include maize, wheat, rice, onion, millet, banana. Parts of a dicot seed. Tester. The tester is the hard outer coat. It is the skin and protects the inner parts of the seed. Cotyledons. These are the seed leaves. Dicots of dicotyledons have two seed leaves. In dicotyledons, food is stored in the cotyledons. Plumule. The plumule grows and develops into the shoot of a plant. Radicle. The radicle grows and develops into the root of a plant. Examples of dicots include beans, peas, castor seeds, mango seeds, groundnuts, papaya seeds. Germination. Germination is the process during which a seed develops into a young plant. A young plant is called a seedling. For germination to take place, air, water and warmth must be available. Stages of germination. The seed absorbs water through the tiny hole called micropyle. The water makes the seed swell. The seed coat, tester, bursts and splits open. The radicle comes out through the micropyle to form a tiny root. After some time the root grows into the soil. The plumule forms a shoot with tiny leaves. The new plant is called a seedling. For a few days, the seedling takes food from the cotyledons which comes above the surface of the soil. When the green leaves develop, they start making food for the plant, which then grows very quickly. Thank you for watching this lesson. We hope you now understand the parts of a flower: pollination, fertilization in plants, parts of a seed and the process of germination. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and other Genius channels relevant to your level of study.